Well, good afternoon, everyone. Just want to welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Canary Coaching webinar series. Today, we have a special treat. We actually have a couple of our valued partners. I have Kevin Jones with Ectobox, and I have David Schultz with G5 Consulting. And they're going to take us through some of the challenges facing us right now in digital transformation. And I'm not going to steal their thunder. So without further ado, Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Everything sound and look okay here?
Yes, you're good.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. I really appreciate you having us here, or you attending, I should say. We're really excited to talk about digital transformations and what that really means to companies, and then getting into some of the down and dirty details, which Dave is going to do. We'll, in this conversation, start off by talking again, like I said, about digital transformations and what it really means to become a data-driven manufacturer or industrial company. And then we'll talk about some of the challenges briefly, and then get into a pilot. As a little bit more of an introduction, I'm CEO and founder of Ectobox. We're a company based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we work with a lot of companies nationally. A lot of them around the Midwest and Great Lakes area. And we like to think of ourselves as an industrial intelligence solutions company. We work with manufacturing and industrial companies to help them operate more efficiently and grow, typically by solving problems or challenges within the four walls of the plant. Dave, do you want to give yourself a real quick introduction as well?
Yeah, so David Schultz, I'm the owner of G5 Consulting. I work with manufacturers for their digital transformation efforts. So I go in and help them develop those strategies and ideally execute their transformation journey or get them started on that journey. I'm also a solution architect for Matrix Technologies. So I work with them as a consultant as well, and to help them both digitally transform and to help their clients digitally transform too. So I'm very busy, but this is what I live and breathe.
Yep, you do. There's no doubt about that. You definitely do. I want to start off by kind of setting the tone for the conversation. It's around manufacturing challenges. I think a lot of you, this is really going to be a review, but I think it, well, I know that it really helps to ingrain these ideas in our heads. It's something that I continue to enjoy listening to and reading about, so that I can really expand my capabilities and kind of get these ideas to become part of my DNA, because this is what we do day in and day out, much like Dave has said as well. You all are facing, I'm sure, a lot of challenges in manufacturing. You know, manufacturing is a lot more competitive these days, more expensive, limited workforce, supply chain disruptions, etc. And it's a really good example. There's a company just east of our office by about 2 hours, one of our clients, and I was talking with the owner of this business, a pretty good size manufacturer, and he had said, Kevin, 2 years ago and just a little bit before 2 years ago compared to today it's so much more expensive, takes so much more work, and it's so much harder to execute the same type of work that we do for our customers. It's become a real challenge. And some of those challenges that he and I talked about, and that we talk with a lot of the companies about that we work with, are some of the typical things like machine downtime and utilization and how to handle that, production throughput, quality, on-time delivery, lots of things, and even things like recruiting. Everybody I talk with, we need more labor, we need more operators, we need more people to get things done. And so when you take a look at all of these kinds of challenges, think about how you can solve them. We might not be able to handle or hire a bunch of people tomorrow. So we have to actually do what we can, do the most that we can with what we have right now, or get the most out of what we have right now. And to understand those challenges and solve them, you really need data to do that. So then, of course, when you talk about machine downtime, it gets pretty obvious. Like, okay, let's look at the occurrences and the frequency of downtime. Look at the shapes of that data, get reason codes for the downtime, either from the operator or from the machine. And if we can actually get that data in real time, then we can get really nice, simple Pareto charts. And then it's pretty straightforward for anyone on the plant floor to realize, oh, this is why the machine is down so often. And companies are finding that it's not the big downtime events that are causing a lot of the issues for machine utilization, but rather it's a lot of the microstops. We work with a lot of different types of companies, and one of the common types of companies we work with are precision metals manufacturers, discrete manufacturers, and it's the door open, door close on the CNC machines to spray out the chips or to adjust the work holding or lots of other things that are downtime, or I should say utilization killers. Think about quality. What if you could actually get better quality data and also directly from the machine, and also get it almost immediately, or at least get it from the operator after each operation, after each part, rather than getting a report a day or two later? You could actually have somebody walking around the plant contributing with proactive coaching moments to handle issues before quality completely tanks. And then take it even to recruiting. If you're a company that are using pieces of paper and Excel spreadsheets to improve your operations, it's not going to look very attractive to the new generations of people that are coming into manufacturing these days. These people are companies that, or excuse me, these people are people that have been born almost literally with a device in their hands, whether it be a smartphone or a tablet. My son is almost 9 years old, and he likes to pretend as though he's predicting schedules and scores in MLB, professional baseball, and he's doing it because he has access, safe access, thankfully, to some data on the web. And I think to myself, what kind of expectations is he going to have when he walks into the workplace in what's going to be 10, 12 years or so? If companies can get can improve how they're operating and get more data to the plant floor to enable the plant floor to innovate, then that company is going to be so much more attractive than the shop down the street, and they're going to have a much better time at recruiting. So what it really comes down to is getting a lot of deeper visibility into the factory floor. Let's stop for a moment and think about the value of data overall. There are a lot of the highest valued companies in our stock markets these days, the publicly traded companies that are actually just data companies. Facebook, Google, Uber, who else? Airbnb, Tesla. They're actually a manufacturer of physical goods, but they are in effect a data company by being able to get data about operations and the actual costs of a car up to the point where wherever it's at in its production. They have that data real time. Not very many people, not very many companies can say that they have that kind of data, and that data becomes really valuable for them to adjust and innovate on the plant floor. And there's a guy that we've worked with, a true thought leader in IoT and other areas, Bruce Sinclair. He has worked for a while. He's been a great entrepreneur, CEO, and leader of some IoT companies in the past. And he's been working for some private equity companies over time. And he's found that private equity companies are actually, when they purchase a company to invest and improve and then sell later, one of the first investments they will make is in their digital transformations to help those companies truly become data driven, to get real visibility into their operations, into their, let's call it virtual factory floor, so to speak, if they're a service company or something else. They're actually spending money on those kinds of efforts to improve the valuation of the company. So if PE groups are doing it, and they're pretty smart people in my book, then that tells me that data and using that data and helping companies transform to become data-driven companies is really valuable. And if we were to step back and think about, at least in manufacturing, the type of data that most of us have access to, it's in the ERP system. There might be a few silos of data, Excel spreadsheets, pieces of paper, an Access database, but how much of that data is available real time? Across all of the data you have that exists, I should say, not to have, but that exists within your plant floor, including the PLCs, the control systems of robots, and the what's in people's heads. All of that is what some will call the hidden factory or dark data. We don't have access to that in real time. So if we were to look at what we do have access to, it's probably less than 15% of what exists in our plant. That's a huge difference. Why don't we get access to that other data figure out what is possible, what we can do with it, derive as much value from that data as possible, and then improve our operations. Now, I'm not suggesting drink from a fire hose because that's not going to work, but let's actually figure out what kind of data we need. And when we look at the kinds of situations a lot of manufacturers have, it becomes what I think of as a 3-layer cake issue, but missing that middle layer of the cake. I love carrot cake with the walnuts in it, and especially the cream cheese icing. The carrot cake isn't a carrot cake to me without cream cheese icing. And that middle layer of the cake between the business unit at the top and the manufacturing plant at the bottom is usually filled with pieces of paper and Excel files. Dave Schultz and I were talking earlier this morning. I think there was a study done, or a quick survey done, of manufacturers, and what was the most common tool used in the plant floor? Microsoft Excel. But that's, as Dave, I think you often say, that's an accounting tool or something like that. Is that?
It's an accounting tool. That's what it was built to do.
Yes, exactly. It's not a manufacturing tool. And so using those kinds of tools creates a complete disconnect between the plant and the business unit. And we need to close that gap. We need to be able to get real-time data. We need to essentially try to reach that holy grail, which is to connect everything and everyone into the network. And then at that point, all layers of the business will be integrated, and everybody's going to be operating based on the data that's available from all the other layers. And then stakeholders within the organization will know the state of the business, the current state, and also the future state in real time. I think of it, if my camera were on right now, I think of it as I'd hold up my hand and point at my palm and say, there's the single version of the truth. And then I'd start to count on my fingers the things that make up that single version of the truth. You need the accessibility of the data needs to be accessible. You need tools to be able to use it. People need to be empowered to be able to use that data. And most importantly, they need to understand how to make decisions and able to take action based on those decisions. That then enables them to be able to innovate on the plant floor. That is, to me, what it is to be a data-driven manufacturer. We need to reach that kind of situation. But a lot of companies, when they're trying to get to this point, they're saying, oh, well, let's continually improve. Let's connect a couple machines here, and let's connect a couple machines there. But what they often do is pull out Microsoft Access or pull out Microsoft Excel or get a CMMS and set it up over here and not connect it to anything. And also, they're not doing this within with a strategy or a plan in mind. It's just small little efforts. It's almost like there's a phrase for marketing that we use internally, accidental marketing efforts or something like that. Here, I would say that's almost like we are almost accidentally improving one small step forward at a time. But overall, if you look at it from the bigger picture, you're taking multiple steps backwards because you're not really helping yourself long term. What we really need to be doing is establishing a focus, a strategy, a plan, setting up ideas and architectures to be able to pull the data together and really drive the company forward by becoming a data-driven manufacturer. So to get from where you're at to this idea of becoming a data-driven manufacturer, let's refer to that as a digital transformation. A bit of an overused term in marketing, and I've been chatting with some others recently. Brandon, might even be on the line here too. He and I have been talking about some other phrases like data evolution or data revolution. We need to go through this kind of change from the current state, which is Industry 3.0, where machines were automated. Computers came on the scenes in the 60s and 70s and in manufacturing and were really refined and widely adopted in the 80s and 90s. And we're moving away from that, where a lot of data is trapped in those PLCs. Great automation, but a lot of data is trapped and not usable. We need to move to Industry 4.0, which is really about the data, using all the technologies available, but really focusing on the data and then using that data to automate business processes. So how do you do that? How do you go through this digital transformation? It's taking, in the broadest terms, taking an inventory of your business, taking an inventory of your intelligence. So the business, where are you at, where you want to go, what are your goals, how are you going to get there, what's your culture like, who do you have working for you and who would adopt these ideas, and who are the CAVE people, CAVE, the Citizens Against Virtually Everything, and a lot of other aspects about the business. And then look at the intelligence. What tools do you have in place? What infrastructure do you have in place? What data do you have available to you that you're using and also not using? And how good are you at using that data that you do have? And then let's work on connecting it all together, integrate it into a unified namespace, which we'll get to. And then you start this iterative process of improving to continue that integration and use of that data. Present some information, learn from that information, expand on that information, and then continue that cycle iteratively well into the future. Let's get onto a journey of digital transformation over time. So with that said, a few thoughts, and Dave, I'm going to ask you to chime in here as well. To me, when I think about this, I think about the fourth bullet point. It's this, what we're really talking about is not one big project, it's a strategy. This is not implementing an MES system off the shelf and spending $500,000 and 18 months to do it, because that's going to go about as well as that last ERP implementation you did probably 3 or 4 years ago, and that probably didn't go too well. And even a company that I was talking with this morning, it's still going on. They still talk about being in this ERP implementation 2 years later. It's crazy. How can you actually get anything done that way? Rather, take an incremental approach. But at the same time, you can't continuously improve your way through the whole thing. You've got to make, as this diagram kind of illustrates, you have to make a major step change in approach for how you value the data, how you use the data, the architectures and capabilities you have internally to actually use the data and implement it. And then from there, you can then make continuous improvements. Dave, do you have some other thoughts on, to some of these points or others that you want to bring up before we keep going?
Yeah, so I think the takeaway that you want to get here is that it's so many manufacturers are trying to do this digital transformation with a CI mindset. And so you take a look at how many manufacturers out there, their innovation, their transformation, their internal, whatever this activity is that they refer to internally, is often born out of the continuous improvement group. And it's why it's not working, because it's a fundamental difference of how you operate your business and how you utilize all of the intelligence of everything that is produced and consumed in your manufacturing process. And I think the other piece that we want to make sure we drive home is that this is a strategy. You have to have a digital transformation strategy that is going to guide all of your decisions for everything that you do moving forward. It is not a big project where we're going to go out and we're going to do something, and 2 years later, we're going to be digitally transformed. It's something that will just continue over and over and over again. But fundamentally, it has to require this disruptive future vision through this lighthouse type methodology and thinking.
Yep, makes sense. Good. Thank you, David. And the question will come up about, well, then, okay, how do you start this process? And the way we started is typically with what Dave and I in our groups talk about or think about as a DTMA, a Digital Transformation Maturity Assessment. And that is effectively starting off with these two parts of the process: inventory of the business, inventory of the intelligence. Come out of that with some objective assessment and reports with a roadmap, definition of what the pilot project is, definition, agreed definition between us and the company we're working with on what that digital strategy actually looks like, help them start to implement some of these ideas, and then define an architecture and some of the other rules to get some of the pieces in place to enable the process of connecting it and integrating with a unified namespace, et cetera, and then helping them after that DTMA to help get into this cyclical process, this continual improvement process over and over again. And as we work with those companies, then we start to hand things off to them so they can take it over. One of the things that really makes this digital transformation, or not one of them, but several pieces of the puzzle that come together to make these digital transformations really effective for how we approach them, which is far, far different than a lot of big companies, big product companies that have big proprietary products that they want to sell you all of, and it's incredibly expensive, et cetera. So we use this idea again of a digital a digital strategy, which defines at a high level, we are going to recognize the value of data, and here's how we're going to use this valuable data in our organization, and here's how we're going to conduct ourselves as a company and conduct this digital transformation in the future. And that's something that leadership needs to create, subscribe to, and then get the rest of the organization and the culture to change around that digital strategy. IC 95 is also a good standard to use, and we bring a couple pieces from that. One is the part where you look at the stack of how a manufacturer is organized by activity and by data, levels 1 through 4, and also the unified namespace is an idea that comes out of, in this specific unified namespace, enterprise site area line cell for organizing data comes out of IC 95. For technology rules, lightweight, data that's communicated should be lightweight, not verbose. Report by exception, data goes one direction and data is reported only when it changes. Edge-driven and open technology, being non-proprietary solutions, and also the agile project approach. All of these pieces come together in the digital transformations that we like to get into place to help companies, and then it becomes an affordable and successful process journey over time, rather than for a small tiny little manufacturer to spend $500,000 and it ends up being wasted in 2 years because it was a failed implementation. And it's these kinds of rules that we use to select technologies, and this is where we run into great products and companies like Canary. It follows all of these rules, and I like that because it is not a proprietary product where you have to pay an arm and a leg to connect to various forms of data. A great company, a great culture within the company, everybody, including Sean on this call, Kyle, and everybody else, they're a great team to work with. A lot of when Dave and I work together on projects and we work with other people, and we think of Industry 4.0, digital transformations, all these marketing terms, but when we really get down to it, we're establishing ourselves as a general community, and also within companies, within manufacturers, industrial companies, a new culture for how to work together, to share data, and to work on innovation by using that data. And we really see it in the cultures of these companies. Dave, anything else to throw in there before I go through a couple more slides real quick and then come over to your part?
Yeah, so when the topic of agile comes up, most people think of that in terms of the language gap here of an agile project. But the idea is it's a way of thinking that we need to be flexible, because as we've learned, the decisions you make today are based on what you know today, and that's why you want to iteratively roll this out. But you have to be very flexible and realize, what we now learn tells us something very different, and that may take us in a different direction. So again, it's being the agile project, but it's being flexible in how your company operates as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Very often what we find in a lot of companies, if we look at the companies from the perspective of an IC95 diagram like this, they've got a lot of discrete connections between systems, and that becomes very difficult to change out systems. There are no standards. It doesn't eliminate silos of data, it helps proliferate silos of data, and the data continues to be trapped in the PLCs, control systems, robots, etc. And what we like to implement, given those kinds of technology rules that we apply, given ISE 95 and some of the ideas from ISE 95, is that we like to connect all of the systems to a data hub, or what I think of, if I were to hold up my hand again, if the camera were on, is that single version of the truth of a data-driven company. Let's get everything accessible within that one place, and let's structure that data using a unified namespace so that it's very straightforward to know where the data is and where you can find it, where you can push it. At that point, just very briefly before we move on, then it becomes much easier to add systems and swap out systems, whether it's a PLC or an MES. A PLC can push data into the data hub, and then an MES can subscribe to that data from the data hub, pull some other data from other systems as well, calculate OEE, and then it can also publish that OEE data back into the data hub such that that data is available anywhere else within the organization. really interesting ideas. And once you start to implement these ideas, then you have really scalable and flexible solutions such that you can start to stand up multiple systems within a flexible environment, publish and subscribe the data with any kind of system for development, TATSoft for developing SCADA and MES systems, Canary for historians, and a really great visualization tool, integrate with your other tools, and then stand up other data brokers. And all you have to do is flip a switch and publish the data, and then the whole structure and all of the data is available. You don't have to set up a bunch of tags and a lot of other manual effort. Just real quick, a few misconceptions. I'm not going to read all of these, but a few that I'm going to pull out here, which I think we ought to try to handle in this session and in our next session. One of the things we've found in working with companies large and small is that there's a big disconnect between leadership and the plant floor, and that culture is never going to change. It actually can if the right people are in the right seats with the right attitudes, and that you are working with people who are not the cave people, not the citizens against virtually everything. Let's work with people who are able to adopt and work with these kinds of, really, they're industry standard ideas that a lot of companies are not willing to accept, and we're here to challenge those kinds of ideas, to help people understand that these newer, let's call them Industry 4.0 open technology ideas, are here to stay and really truly do work. And it's those kinds of ideas that then eliminate these misconceptions about that technology is really complex and expensive, and you can't work with legacy systems, and pilot projects are really expensive, and it takes way too many people and too much time to set up new equipment. I mean, those are misconceptions that really just isn't true. So with that said, let's move over to what we're going to be working on. Real quick, I'll summarize some of this and then turn it over to Dave. Dave is going to be presenting a basic pilot project as a quick demo that he's put together. The idea, the use case, is that it's a tank farm for a chemical company, and the objective of the pilot project that has come out of the DTMA, the Digital Transformation Maturity Assessment, as the first project that's on the roadmap, is to monitor and improve quality within the tanks, and to start with one tank and then to add others. And the idea is to monitor temperature, the agitator blades, volumes, levels, etc., and to be able to monitor that data to improve to improve the quality of the product. And really what we're trying to do is to get the data from the remote locations securely and in real time, and also be able to look at the data historically, so that you can understand what goes on. As Dave and I were talking about earlier this morning, if a customer calls in and says there was a problem with this batch, all right, well, let's look at this batch. Let's look at the data historically and figure out what happened. Or if we need to, let's set some alarms and alerts for the temperatures going too high, or this agitator blade isn't working. It's not turning on when it should. Okay, let's take care of it right away, rather than let that big massive batch go to waste and you've almost literally dumped tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars down the drain. So Dave, you want to take it from here, talk about the process and maybe show a couple screens, or should I go to the architecture diagram here?
Yeah, if you just want to go to the architecture real fast. So what I've done here is using an Opto 22 Groove Epic, is that I have created tags for 3 tanks. That's going to be the level, it's going to be the temperature, and it's going to be the state of the agitator. That's going to come into the Epic. I've used a Groove view. I've created a screen where the operators can visualize that data on the plant floor. I've also used the Epic to publish that payload into an MQTT broker using a Sparkplug B format. And that's where I have Canary also subscribed to that, where it is now retrieving that data. And then I'm building a virtual view that can be visualized in Axiom. And if you want, I can start sharing my screen and show a little bit of that. But the idea is that this Groove Epic is sitting in a remote location. It's publishing it to a broker, and then a historian sitting at an enterprise site is actually historizing that information and bringing it back. So let me get to the right screen here, and then I can start showing you what I did. So again, I am showing right now the screen.
Discord, David.
Oh, I'm on Discord. That should not be sharing this screen. Wasn't the screen that I shared. Apologies.
All good.
Wasn't the screen I selected anyway.
Yeah, blame the technology.
All right. How about now?
There you go.
All right, perfect. So what we're looking at here is this pack control. This is the development environment that you use inside for the Opto 22 for a number of their Groove products. So here are the tanks that I have over here. So there's some temperature, there's some level, and then I also have some agitators that are state IO tags that are going to be turning on and off the mixer itself. This is a view that I've built inside using the Groove view. This is a tool that comes with the Groove Epic. And you can see here's the actual, it's the classic sine wave, have some spark line charts. You can see the level of the tanks, temperature of the tanks, and you can also see whether the agitators are on or off. I've used the MQTT capability within the Epic, and I'm now publishing that to an Ectobox Pittsburgh. So that's my group and edge node IDs. And then I'm using production as my device ID. And so all that information then comes over into Canary. And then I'm going to walk through exactly how I built this asset screen. So now all I have to do is go between both of the two tanks, and you can start seeing the data that's there. It's a lot more impressive when you're using data that's a little more production oriented rather than a sine wave, but it gives you an idea of what some of these tools can do. And then at the very end, I'm going to demonstrate the capability of what it means when something is truly edge driven and you've programmatically have information that's being consumed that gets published to that broker. And we're going to bring in if you were paying attention to this first screen, you'll notice there's a third tank here. We're going to bring that in. I'm going to show you how quickly that happens. So make sure to come back next week and I'll walk through exactly what I've done here.
It will blow your socks off. No doubt about that. Yes, absolutely.
It's a big difference between, well, I'm going to connect it to an OPC server and then I'm going to bring it in and then I'm going to histerize it. And,
yes, exactly.
Way easier.
Yeah, exactly. Huge difference. Well, that's everything that we wanted to present today. Next week, like Dave said, he's going to be walking through a lot more of the details to put that kind of solution together. And we're going to be applying a lot of the principles that we've discussed here around these technology rules, ISA 95, et cetera, the unified namespace. All of that is really going to come into play. And you're going to see what it takes to put together a pilot project, the first one for a company, and then what it takes to add new devices to that structure thereafter. It's really interesting conversation, and we're truly looking forward to talking with everybody next week. That's everything that we have. Sean, are there any questions? And I should have said at the beginning too, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to throw them out.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kevin. I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you, Benson. He's giving you guys kudos. No, I think, if anyone has any questions, I think, did you have a slide there with your contact information? Yeah, perfect. So we'll have a recording available. We'll be emailing that out to anybody who is registered. Feel free to pass that around to other colleagues as well and get the word out for next week. We're really looking forward to it.
Yes. It's been a lot of fun. We love doing this.
Yeah, great to have you guys today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's great to be here. Thanks everybody for jumping on, taking a look.